Hello and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Aussie writers and other creatives.
Hello, and I'm Lynn Testoni. I'm a journalist and a content writer as well, and Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we're bringing you all kinds of tips, ideas, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business. Hi Rach, how are you going? It's still a bit crazy busy out there for me at the moment, but I think I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. What about you?
Yeah, my to-do list is slowly being marked off, but everybody still does want stuff before the 17th, which is insane. I don't understand it at all. It's like, just leave it to 2022. But anyway.
And so they can go on holidays and leave us with the stress, I think.
I know.
Yes.
I know. Yeah. But I've been doing a few polls. I did one on LinkedIn and I did one in the Gold group about how long people are taking off over Christmas. And I'm only taking about 2 weeks, but I'll be working. So it's not really even a break.
No. I think I'm taking a week. So that's about it. But that's okay. I'm all right with that.
Yeah.
This week, I'm so excited because we've got a return guest. This is the first time we've had somebody back. So we've got John Burfitt back, and he's a friend of both of us and a great colleague. And the episode we had with John on pitching last year, how can we ever forget his pitch, don't bitch, was a great success.
Absolutely.
And we thought we'd have him back with a different topic.
Yes. So for those of you who don't know John Burfitt, he has been a freelancer for quite a few years now and always has a lot of pearls of wisdom to share. We burn up the phone lines quite a lot every week, having a rant or having a chat. But I think this episode, he's going to talk about how freelancers can recover if you stuff up with an editor or a client, which is a great topic because as much as we like to think we shouldn't make mistakes, we're only human.
Yes, exactly. Because I know I've made a couple of doozies myself. So this topic really resonated with me. So welcome back to the Content Bite, John. We're so happy to have you on the Zoom again.
It's just nice to know that I was obviously on my best behavior last time, so I've been invited back. So listen, I'm going to do my best to be on my best behavior today, but seriously, a real pleasure to talk to both of you. And can I just say that last podcast we did, I had a number of people talk to me about it. So you're obviously reaching a really dedicated audience of people who really want to talk about the issues that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We have some lovely listeners who really do like the topics that we cover. But I think this one, we haven't covered it really in any big way. And I know you came to me and pitched the topic a while ago. I mean, what inspired it for you?
Yeah, this is something I've been thinking about for a while. Just to put it into context for you. Recently, I've been doing a lot of work with a favorite editor of mine who I love working with, and we're old mates. We've known each other for 20 years. And we work together very, very well. But 2 years ago, I actually almost burnt that relationship when I stuffed up something really badly. An email went missing. We were doing this, it's a long story, but anyway, we did this content project. It was going really, really well. She sent me an email saying, hey, there are 2 extra pieces I need. And it got lost. So it's the very day before the project is due. And she rings me and goes, hi, where's that content? The next day I was flying to Japan on a work trip, on a travel work trip. And I went, oh my God. And the project was due the next day. So I couldn't even pull an all-nighter to get this content in. I just felt so horrible that I had let her of anybody down over this. And it was something that I had stuffed up very, very badly. But I came back from that. And as I said, we continue to work together. Contrasting that is an experience I had with an editor very, very early in my freelancing career when I burned a relationship and I never came back from it. And the way I burnt that relationship was that I sent an email to this guy, an editor who I was doing a lot of work with on 3 different magazines. And I said to him, hey, just wanted to ask, is it possible to talk about my rates and maybe renegotiate my rates? And that literally saw me black banned by the company. And no matter what I did, no matter the lengths that I went to, as he told me I was impertinent and I was way out of line even asking for a pay rise.
Wow.
And there was no way I came back from it. And I had to wait for him to leave the company because I wasn't just black banned by him. I got black banned by the whole company. A friend of mine was an editor who went to work with that company, and she said, "Oh, I'm going to bring you in and bring you on board, and you and I want you to do blah, blah, blah." Well, after her second week there, she rang me and said, "I'm actually not allowed to use you. You do know you're black banned by this entire company for sending an email saying, 'Hi, can we just renegotiate my rates? Can we put up my rates by 10 cents a word?'" And that had me black banned for a good 3 to 4 years. So what the point I'm trying to say is, sometimes you come back from it, sometimes you don't. And it depends on the dynamics. So I wondered a lot about why it is you can get back. And sometimes what are the things that you do before we get there, but what are the things you do that make you burn a relationship that you should just be avoiding?
Definitely. God, that's so interesting. I mean, how petty of that company to black ban you across the board, firstly. But I always worry it's the mistake that I've missed. You know, like as a former sub, I try really hard to double check and check everything before I file it. But I always think, what if something sneaks through into print and it's been missed by their sub, and then I'm the fall guy, the fall girl for that.
Yeah.
So it's such an interesting topic, and it's something that, it's something that we all face, that fear of mucking up, that fear of burning a relationship. So I understand that you sort of spoke to a few editors when you were researching the podcast episode. So what did you learn from talking to those on the other side? I bet it was an eye-opener.
Yeah, it really was. It was an eye-opener for two reasons. One of the main reasons was that the way journos end up being on a blacklist or a do not work with list is sometimes the most simple of professional reasons. And one of the most important ways to get back onto the good list is for the most professional of reasons. And okay, what I mean by that is it's about being really, really professional in the first place, so that you're acting in a way that editor needs you to help them fill their website, or fill their magazine, or fill their whatever content project they're working on. But everybody I spoke to came back to two words about the stuff up and about getting back onto the list. And the first word was relationship, and the second word was trust. What kind of a relationship they have with that journo, and secondly, how much they can trust them. And I spoke to quite a number of editors, and it was really interesting how, without any prompting, they kept talking about, well, it depends on the relationship I have with that journalist. It depends how much I can trust them. And that's about covering up the stuff up and getting back into their good books and onto their list where they go, yeah, Rachel Smith, she's great, I'll work with her again.
That comes down to relationship building then, how important that is, and how we probably don't do it as much as we should, or we don't prioritize it as much as we should.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably a whole other
absolutely.
We can have one day about relationship building, but just sometimes when you hear editors say, I really don't want to have a relationship with my journos, I just want them to deliver copy by email or through the system, or uploading it into the process or whatever. I don't think that's true. I think that's true for a certain number, but a number of them say, I want to know who that journo is, so that I know I can trust them, or indeed I want to work with them beyond the email connection, or beyond it just being everything done by email or by messenger or by text.
I think that's true. Like, having been an editor, everyone stuffs up. You know that. Absolutely. Your staff stuffs up, or a freelancer does. And if you've had somebody who's turned in great work for years and years and misses a deadline, or gets a brief wrong, or makes a big mistake, you tend to say, oh, okay, that's fine, because it's really rare. But if they consistently do it, like I've had a couple of people that, when you talk about getting the trust back, there was somebody I used once, and I was chasing some copy, and she said, oh no, I'm not going to do it. She just said, oh, it was too hard, I'm too busy now, I'm not going to do it. And I've never used that freelancer ever again. And it's partly because she told me that she got snowed or whatever, was quite different, but she told me the day before the magazine was going to print. If she not being somebody I'd worked, and she'd never been somebody I worked with before, I might have felt differently about it, because she had no, I guess, runs on the board, is what you're saying. Do you think that's what it's about, the trust?
It's about the trust, and it's also about being professional. And you build up trust by being professional, by delivering, by doing what it is that we do, but doing it effectively, so that if they say, here's the brief, follow the brief, that you don't go, no, I think I've got a better story, and rewrite and writing a completely different story. And it's interesting, the editors I spoke to said, Tommy, a number of times that happens, that they go, they find themselves going back through their emails or their system going, maybe I didn't brief this person properly, because the story that comes in has almost nothing to do with what was briefed. And the journo later goes, yeah, I just thought I could improve upon it for you. And you just go, wow. Or they've asked for 1,000-word story, and suddenly 3,000 words comes through, and the editor goes, I only need 1,000 words. And the journo goes, listen, I'm really too busy to cut it, so I figured I'd just leave it up to you.
Oh, goodness.
Like some spelling mistakes that just throughout. I mean, you know, and that's something that you can kind of cope with. But one thing that one editor, but actually two stories I want to tell you that two of the editors I spoke to, one said for one of the journos he commissioned, the journo said, terrific, thank you. Yep, I'll take it on board. Wonderful. Deadline day came, and the editor chased him up. Wouldn't respond to emails, wouldn't respond to phone calls, wouldn't respond to texts, wouldn't respond in any way. He eventually sent a courier round to that journalist's home with a letter saying, hi, listen, can you just let me know how you're going, or if anything's wrong or whatever? And said to the courier, can you wait to get a response? And the courier knocked on the door, and the courier saw somebody looking through the blinds and wouldn't open the door. And the thing about that journo was, the next month, the journo came back to that same editor and said, hi, listen, just wondering if you've got any stories you're commissioning this month. completely clueless. So that was one that I found absolutely astounding. And another one was an editor who said the story that came through referred to a whole lot of reports, government reports. And when she was checking it, she went, no, these reports are wrong. In fact, these figures are wrong. And so she called the journo and said, you know, what's happened with this? And she goes, oh, I'm sorry, I've sent you through the wrong report. It's actually from a media release. And so the editor went, oh, that's fine. That's an easy mistake. Went through the media release. It wasn't there. To cut a long story short on that one, the journo couldn't remember where she had got these figures from. And this was about to go to print. And the editor suddenly went, she had to read through the whole 2,000-word story going, I wonder how much of else of this that she stuffed up. Things like that. So, I mean, we can talk about, you know, late deadlines. That's really annoying. And yeah, it doesn't help. Or, you know, spelling that's a bit messy. But it's doing that kind of stuff literally just burns the house down in terms of trust, and also burns the relationship. I don't get a journo who accepts a commission and then just doesn't deliver, and then a month later goes, hi, I'm ready for the next story. Are you taking pictures? And yet that's what's happened.
You know, it's so interesting. We actually we did a kind of double post on Rachel's list about this, and we had the editors talking about, you know, their bad freelancer stories. And then we had the freelancers talking about, you know, what had happened to them, the most crazy things that happened to them. But I go back to the editor one over and over, because I really think it's such a no-brainer. There's really a short list of things that you need to do to stay in an editor or client's good books. And, you know, we hear all the time that there are only a handful of really good freelancers out there. So if you want work and you want consistent work, you can get it, but you just have to be professional and, you know, get things in on deadline, and don't overwrite I mean, that came up, didn't it, Lynn, on Claire Brundle's episode, especially with content marketing. And she was saying so much has gone into that content marketing brief that by the time it hits the writer, they want exactly what they've given you. And it's people that go off piste and think, you know, I'll just do this, or I'll do that, or I'll add another 500 words or whatever. So it's all those sorts of things, I think. Yeah. But I think, you know, we have to come back to that notion that you can make amends in a lot of these situations.
I think so. I think it's always better to confess straight away when you've stuffed up.
Not skirt around it so much. Yeah.
I mean, I've had I've mucked up a couple of things like that quite recently. There's an editor I do a lot of work for, and he just sent me an email saying, how's that story going? And I thought, oh, I can't remember that story. And I went through my emails and I did have it. And it was like a week late and I was mortified. But basically, I just said, I am so sorry. It just totally dropped off the radar. And I just, as John's alluded to before, I did an all-nighter and I just worked on that and I got it to him by 9 a.m. the next morning. But I was worried that I'd burnt a bridge, but I apologized, sent it to him, and he did commission me for the next month. So I thought, well, that's something. But I was a bit mortified. But I did sort of say, oh my God, I did forget. I mean, because, you do, and I get a lot of stuff through my emails. So, yeah.
I think I want to jump in and just say that comes down to being responsive. Like that was a huge deal for the editors that responded to that blog post we did.
Yeah.
There was some stories where, they were just ghosted over and over and commissions were due. And there was one story, I'll never forget it, where the editor was ghosted and the commission was due. And she tracked down the writer on social media who was like sunning herself by a pool and saying, I'm pretty sure I'm on deadline. I'm pretty sure I'm on deadline right now, but whoops, sort of thing. So you can be tracked down on your socials, Important point.
And also it can come down to like, I contributed one of the stories in there about a phenomenal journalist who has since been nominated for a Walkley, who I've known for many, many years. And I commissioned him to do a particular story. And the night before it was due, he rang and said, I am too hungover to write the story that's due the next day. And we were actually going to print the end of the next day. I'm far too hungover from the big party we were at the night before. I'm sorry, John, I won't be able to deliver the story. Well, here's the thing. I was at the same party the night before that he was at. I was hungover as well. And it's like, yeah, but hold on, I was at the same party and you're a bit younger than I am, like pull an all-nighter. He said, no, sorry, I can't. I'm simply not up to writing that story. So I ended up pulling the all-nighter and writing the story. And that guy is phenomenally talented, but I will never, ever, ever use him again. And it's interesting. This is the thing. And Lynn, you've been an editor. Editors talk. And that was, I had a number of editors say to me afterwards who knew that I knew this guy. So they said, have you ever worked with Mr. X? And I went, yes. And they went, was he always late? Did he sometimes pull out the day before? And I'd go, yes, he did. Yep. And all the editors I spoke to for today's podcast spoke about, in fact, I'm going to quote one of them who said, you would be very naive to think editors don't keep a list of freelance journalists never to work with. They do. Every editor I spoke to said the same thing, said, yeah, we do. We have a list. One editor who's a major editor-in-chief who works across a number of titles said to me, I have a list of journalists never to work with that I give to my new editors when they join, not out of spite, not to be spiteful, not to be nasty, not to get back at that person, but so that my new editors who are joining don't get burnt the way that I got burnt. And so what I'm saying is they can be passed down. So if you're not taking care of that trust and that relationship, and you think, oh, that's just, Mr. X or Ms. X, I've burnt her. Well, she might now be the publisher or the editor-in-chief and is handing your name down to other people going, don't ever work with that person because
oh my gosh, those lists would be gold if you could get your hands on them.
Well, can I say, having been on one, it's no fun to be on one. Yeah. But it was interesting when I said, well, how do people end up on that list? It was not about, oh, they were rude to me or they didn't send me a Christmas present. It was about their copy was so sloppy that I would spend 3 hours rewriting it every single time. They would forget every commission. I read their story once. This was interesting. And I found that 90% of the story was cut and pasted from various websites. And I went, this journalist has done no research. It's a cut and paste job. And it's those kind of things. So it goes way beyond, oh, there was no spelling, there were spelling mistakes. It's that thing about lazy, sloppy, poor work.
Yeah. It is interesting. I do remember, I guess it's like a story of a journalist that I knew who was a regular contributor to the magazine that I took over as an editor, and it was fine. But what happened was that we had a regular sub who'd been there for years, and this person, the writer, had been there for years, and got a new. The regular sub went on holidays. We had a new casual sub, and they just were more thorough in their fact checking, and they found basically that all the copy was lifted off websites because they just checked, and the old sub never had. And it's funny because I actually got rid of both the sub and the writer because of that, because I thought obviously the sub wasn't doing their job, which is what they were just not even just tidying out, just putting it through and not really checking anything. And that was a real eye-opener. And the worst thing is actually, as an editor, is if something goes wrong in a story, something minor, and you check and then you find out that everything's wrong.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's actually the worst thing. And then I've had a writer where there was a mistake and that was bad, and then we fixed it, and these things happen. And then I thought, I wonder about last month. And then I went through and did some extra checking, found out there were a multitude of mistakes. And then I realized that it had been happening for ages. And that was an awful feeling.
And that seriously burns the house down in terms of trust, then, doesn't it?
It does.
It's like, so
one mistake, we're all human.
Yeah, we're all human.
Yeah, let's talk for a sec about that, like the magnitude of the mistakes. So what can you come back from and what can't you come back from?
Well, what can you come back from? I think it's interesting. I think you definitely can come back, but it's going to take some work. One of the things that everybody I spoke to said, and as an editor I know as well, is first things first, own it. Own your mistake. Don't make 1,000 excuses. Don't say, oh, well, I had trouble finding sources. Own your mistake. Own it. Apologize. Don't do it by a simple text message. My bad. As one of the editors said, one of the journalists said, she emailed and said, hi, can you give me a call because there's some problems with the story? She got a text message back going, my bad. You don't do that. And that was it. That was it. So the first thing is fess up, own it, be professional and own it. One of the best ways to own it is ring. Now, to some people who hate talking, I still don't understand that, because as a journalist, I love communicating with people. Pick up the phone and ring and say, I am so sorry. I'm really sorry about this. Own it, apologize, explain it. And one editor said to me, explain it, but don't excuse it. Don't make excuses. Explain, this is what's happened, and I really apologize. And after you've done that, send them up a follow-up email and say, I really need to apologize for that. And here's the thing, what can I do to make this up? What can I do to, come up with a solution? So, yes, this is a major stuff up. Like Lynn just said, it's a major stuff up. I forgot about it. And Lynn pulled an all-nighter. If I wasn't going to Japan on a 6 o'clock flight the next morning for my editor, I would have worked all night. But I needed like 3 or 4 different sources. So I couldn't work through the night. I couldn't be calling people at 2 o'clock in the morning. But try and come up with a solution. If it's beyond a solution, then just follow up with even a letter or a card. And this sounds really old-fashioned, but it's about basic professionalism. Start laying the concrete of what do I have to do to repair, not just that I've stuffed up, but my reputation, because you have really damaged your reputation. Also, if the stuff up is that your editor has said, hey, listen, it wasn't great, but I'm going to give you some feedback on this particular story, rather than go, right, yep, okay, yep. Listen to that feedback, take notes, and apply it the next time, so that the next time the editor goes, great, that's fantastic. This person has applied it. One of the editors I spoke to said, I give my first-time writers buckets and buckets of feedback, sometimes by phone call, sometimes by email. And she said, and yet the ones that the next time I see that feedback has been applied and worked with, she said, it's about 50%. The other 50%, literally, it was a waste of my time. So they're the things to come. They're, I think, the fundamentals. One of the best ways that one of the editors said to me was, I've got to say, he said, it's very hard to get back onto his good list. But he said there's one really surefire way to do it, and that is by pitching me again with a red hot story that makes it impossible for me to say no to. That I go, you know what, that story is so good, the thought behind it is so great, and the way it'll fit into my platform or my magazine or whatever is so sensational, I can't say no to it. So
I
he
wonder
says,
if I know who you're talking about.
you do. And then said, what, so if you've then got a yes from me, then you better ensure that the story that comes through is 100% in shape. It has been triple checked. The facts are correct. It's engaging. It's not sloppy. The punctuation is correct. The spelling's correct. The list of all the sources are there. And he said, basically, I can look at the story and go, yeah, wow, that person's really done their best to repair the relationship. This story, I literally just run it. I don't have to do anything with it. And he said, and if you do that 2 or 3 times, he said that stuff up is really quickly forgotten.
You've redeemed yourself.
You've absolutely redeemed yourself.
Yeah.
He said, but the people that go, I'm really, really sorry about that. And then he said, next issue, the story's a week past deadline. And I'm calling them. They're going, it's on its way. Yeah, it's on its way. He said, I just go, yeah, wow. How serious were you about repairing the relationship?
Yeah.
What about a long-standing client? Do you think there's a difference with somebody you've had for a while?
Like compared to a new contact, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, by the way, when I'm talking about all this, I'm actually not just necessarily, I need to be clear about this. I'm not necessarily talking about new time, first time freelancers. I'm also talking about regular people that will be late, will send through copy that is really, really sloppy. It's interesting you're talking about long-term people, and I'll own something in this as well. One of the editors I spoke to said, it is so obvious. So I don't care if they're new journos or they're seasoned journos who have been around for years. It's really obvious when somebody has literally pulled it together at the last minute and just thrown it on the page. She was saying it just sticks out. It's so obvious that they've literally, it's just a rush job. It might be right in on deadline. There might be no spelling mistakes, but she says it's really sloppy. That's not really engaging, that's not really clever, that's not really tight. And I've got to own this. When I first went freelancing 20 years ago, and this is my 20th anniversary this year, I had a number of different clients, and one of them, which was fantastic, was a teen magazine, was one of the teen magazines that was around at the time. And I used to always, and because I was writing for the Good Weekend, and I was writing stuff for the Herald, and I was, writing for some high-end publications. With the teen stuff, I'd think, oh, that's easy. I'll just pull that together. And I used to literally pull it together often the afternoon or the evening before it was due, until the day that that editor said to me, listen, by the way, your copy, yeah, it's all spell checked and it's all clean, but I can tell you've pulled this together. And he said, you've got one more issue, John, and after that, you've got one more issue to redeem yourself, but after that, I'm thinking of actually not using you. And that was all came down to my attitude that I went, oh, it's teen media, easy, just pull it together. No.
I think that also comes into not overloading yourself with work, not saying yes to everything, because then, you're only giving that, 50% to something because you've always got another deadline, breathing down your neck. So it's about leaving yourself enough time, I suppose, to do a good job.
Yeah, Rachel, you're spot on. Everybody I spoke to said it's really obvious the journos who have overcommitted to everybody and are literally just like churning it through. And I feel I'm getting their copy and going, yeah, it's okay. But I feel like I'm part of their production line rather than they know the title, they know the platform, they're writing to style. Oh, wow, this story is really good. This actually might get lots of hits for us rather than this is a color by numbers approach to this particular topic. And one editor also said to me, sometimes they deal with a couple of journos who go, I'm really sorry that the copy was sloppy. I'll own that, but I'm so busy, I'm literally slotting you in.
And that doesn't make you feel good, does it?
That doesn't make the editor feel particularly special. And it's like, you know what? I'll take that problem off your hands. I actually won't commission you in the future.
Yeah.
So, and just sort of on the term of long-term clients, and I'm sure it's happened to a lot of us, you do get to a point where familiarity breeds not contempt, but too much content, where you think, oh yeah, I'm doing this story, been writing for this platform for 10 years. I'll just bash it out. And you can't let yourself get into that. And I actually found myself, I got into problem about 2 years ago with a particular editor where I went, I wasn't doing it the night before, but I was writing color by numbers to style. And that editor pulled me up on it. And it was great. It was actually great because it actually gave me a kick in the pants about it.
I agree with you. I think the longer that you've written for someone, the more it can become like that. And that might be a sign that you need to say, look, can you, if it's a content marketing agency or something, can you put me on another client, like research their clients and say, I'd really like to write for XYZ and, you know, see if you can resolve it that way. So you're on a fresh new client, or think about actually saying, I've, you know, moving on to other clients so that you don't burn that bridge.
Or even just taking a month, you know, saying you're away, taking a month, sometimes writing it a week ahead so you have a week to sit on it and then come back to it.
Yeah, I love that.
Right.
Some of my clients I've had for 4 or 5 years, and it's really hard to do that, and you have to try and get a new fresh angle. And actually that's the sort of thing I take when I go on a long walk. I think about, okay, how can I make bricks exciting again? And then I do come back to it and I think, oh, I haven't actually thought this. Or actually the other thing is sometimes I start Googling and seeing what everybody else is doing in that space, and it does inspire you. And because if you've been writing similar sort of content or similar sort of stories, having a look at the competition, sometimes you don't realize that everybody's got a step up on you, that everybody, whatever you were doing was cleverer or different. And now, oh, look, everyone's doing what I was doing 10 years ago. It's time for me, because you just sort of do get into something worked, it was good, and you don't realize. But doing a bit of Googling in your category, or maybe sort of reading some overseas magazines or something that's out of the niche that you're in, that's a good way of getting a fresh perspective too, because you don't realize.
Can I actually say on that point, and that's such a great point, Lynn, sometimes when I find myself that I'm thinking, gee, I know this title so well, I hope I'm staying fresh. What I do is I actually read all the other writers who have appeared, who are working, you know, alongside me, and I read their content and I go, oh my God, they're good. They're like, this is really good. And I actually make a challenge for myself that I go, gee, these people are so good. And I love his style, and I love the way that she introduces a story that way, that I go in and I analyze other people's style. And then I think, and that gives me a kick in the pants where I go, you need to pick up your game, mate, because they're doing really, really well. And this is an interesting point that one of the editors, when I said, what do you want from, you know, the journos you work with? And she said, I just want them to be working at the standard that all my other freelancers are working at. Not the standard that I set, but the standard that all the other freelancers who are part of my team are working at. And I suddenly went, oh my God, wow. Like when you think about, you know, the working on a platform or a magazine or whatever, and you think about all the really talented, great journos that you're working alongside, some of whom you know, some of whom are friends, some of whom you don't know, but you go, right, okay, and I'm coming up to there, okay, lift your game. And that's actually a really good way to think about it, that coming up to the standard of all my other all my other freelancers that I have on my team. And you go, and then you want to go, well, what are they doing that I'm not? And that's maybe sometimes not a bad thing to ask. One thing, by the way, that I do at the end of every year, and I've been doing this for years, is I say to the editors that I'm working with, can you give me some feedback on what I need to be doing before we go into the next year? And some of them go, oh, you've been working with us for years, don't worry about it. I go, no, please don't dismiss me. What are some of the things I need to be doing to be lifting my game? Or what are some of the things that other freelancers who are on your platform are doing that you really like, that you might think I could learn from? And I only ask it once a year, but every year I come away with, oh, I hadn't even thought of that. That's great, you know.
That's interesting. I've never thought to do that. I liked your point about, you know, reading widely. I think we all need to be doing that, both with our sort of, you know, colleagues and contemporaries work, as well as, you know, other things in our niche. But I also wanted to talk about mistakes and failures as kind of a learning experience, and whether it's a sign that you need to change or update some of your processes. Like I know that, you and I have talked about, a really simple thing but can catch so many mistakes, and that's printing something out and reading it aloud, which is just one small little process. But even bigger processes, I know Lynn and I have talked about this and changing our processes. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think, look, my weakness, I know, is that I'm not a detail person. So I'm a much more of a big picture thing. So I have all these extra processes to catch the details. Like I have a lot of checklists. So whenever I'm doing proofreading, I have a little checklist and say to make sure that I check all the little details, you know, things like the folios are right and the headlines are right. And I do a couple of processes, because otherwise I will just look at the big picture and it pulls me down. There are people who are opposite to me, like I have a friend who's really detail orientated, and she has to pull herself out of the weeds. She suddenly realized she's been down in the weeds fixing up all the details and hasn't realized that the story is not meeting the brief. And so she says she has to leave everything for at least half a day and come back and pretend she's the editor reading a contributive story so she can, you know, make sure it meets the bigger picture. We talked about me missing a deadline, and I thought, because I have now about 40 clients and they're not all consistent, but there's so many different bits and pieces. So I just was using Trello for some of the big projects, but now I use Trello for absolutely everything. That's because I forgot that commission, that email. And now every time I get an email, I just stick it on a Trello card. And then it's good and I don't forget it. So you really have to look at your processes when you stuff up.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things to pull your copy into shape, and I actually teach this at university, I say, number one, print it out, because what you pick up on the page is 10 times more effective than what you pick up on the screen. Number two, read it aloud, because if it doesn't read well to the ear, it doesn't read well to the eye. Number three is change your location. So if you're sitting at your desk writing it, print it out and then go and sit at the kitchen table, go and sit in the courtyard, go and sit in the garden, go and sit somewhere else so that you're looking at it with a completely different set of eyes. Number four is write it in advance and what I call leave it to cool. Leave it to cool. So that might be an hour, it might be a day, but come back to it and look at it with another set of eyes. And number five is, where possible, ask one of your mates to have a quick look through it. Rachel, you know, thank God bless you, Rach. Sometimes when I'm unsure about a story, I send it through to Rachel and say, does this make sense to you? And she sometimes does the same with me. You know, it's that thing about having some standards that you work with, that you know are going to pick up those mistakes. But I just wanted to mention that it was really interesting that, as I said, and I'm going to own this, a couple of years ago, I did a story for a magazine I've been writing for years, and the editor sent me through an email later in bullet point form highlighting all the things that I got wrong in the story, half of which he was wrong about, but the other half he was completely right about. And yes, I had made 4 or 5 mistakes. It was a pretty interesting way to highlight what I'd done. And I was pretty humiliated by it. And I was speaking to a publisher, a friend of mine, and she said to me, you know, you're actually teaching at university and you're teaching copy editing. How often do you now stop and put the processes that you know intrinsically into action? Or do you just go, I've been doing this for years, I can just deliver it? And I was like, wow, oh my God, like it was and I loved her for asking me that question, because the truth was, no. I would go, you know what, I'm teaching this, so I'm pretty much on top of this. And so when I actually stopped and went back to those fundamental 101 points of, here's another thing I do. Oftentimes, if it's a very detailed story, I'll print it out and I'll go through and highlight with a highlighter pen every name, age, place, location, date, fact, etc. And then I literally go back and Google each of those and tick them off as I go, so that when that story goes through, I know it's 100%. And she said to me, have you been doing that recently? I went, no. She went, John, these are processes that you're teaching. Why aren't you applying them yourself? And it was a really tough question, but part of me had become a little bit arrogant and said, oh yeah, you know, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for years. So don't be afraid to go back to your fundamental processes or adapt fundamental processes to actually get it into shape. And just a quote from one of the other editors I spoke to, and I find this astounding. And she said to me, 80% of freelancers, when they send their work through, do not include heads, cells, and links for references. And I just went, really? And like, that's something that I'm teaching at university, and I'm teaching at colleges, and I also do private tutoring. And that's something that we're teaching 18 and 19-year-olds to do from that point. So the fact that people who are now freelancers, who are experienced, are not doing the basics of head cells and links, 80%, you just go, why not?
I think as well, doing those things, like, it's such a little thing. I know when I write for Choice, every single thing, fact, quote, anything has to be footnoted. And it makes you feel much calmer when you're handing it in, because you know that everything's been documented and checked, and, you know, but I think doing that, like, for subsection at the bottom, including all the links, including the numbers and the emails of everybody you've talked to in case they just want to ring them up, including a head and a cell, because who else is going to be, you know, okay, the subs are probably going to rewrite it, but who's better at doing that? You know the story. So you should be doing that. And I think it's such a sign of respect to include all those little bits and pieces, because it's really making the people on the other end, it's making their job so much easier. And you do continue to get work by just doing that, making their job easier. It builds that trust in your work and your reputation, and you get more. I honestly believe that.
If we're throwing ideas into the pot of, like, you know, ways to make sure that you are right on target and right on brief. And this is something that I started doing only a couple of years ago, and boy, it's made a big difference. Is when I finish the story, I go, yeah, okay, that's right, that's pretty good, that's in shape, I'll send it off now. I will literally write the email to the editor, attach the story, and then I go, right, before you hit send, go back to the original commission brief, go back to the briefing document that has been sent through, that has the story there, and read through the brief. And
get off, have I met all the points?
And then and I'm talking about at email stage, not just like final polish. And then I suddenly go, oh my God, this was part of the story. And all it needs is like 2 sentences. But it's like, if once I put that in, that story then hits every single aspect, or that content hits every single aspect of that brief. And then once I do that, that's when I hit send. And I've got to tell you, that has actually really changed the way of hitting the brief, because everybody I spoke to said, just journos that just don't hit the brief, that just, you know, or they'll hit half the brief and the other half they go, I couldn't find a way of making room for it, so I just didn't bother with it. And the editors are going, I needed you to do the whole story, not just the bits that you could fit in. So that, for me, that's a really good process.
I think as well, like, looking at the brief, as you say, if there are things that you can't include in the word count, but they're in the brief, include them as an extra at the bottom. So the editor has an option to include it or not, or they can come back to you and say, can you please rework this and include that section? And it just shows, yes, you can read the brief, because a lot goes into, if it's a good editor briefing you, a lot goes into those briefs and how they want the story and all of that. And ignoring part of it is just, again, making everyone's life harder.
What I actually do is, when I get a brief, is wherever it's from, an editor or a client, I actually cut and paste the brief into my copy. Into the body copy.
Me too.
So when I'm writing it, I've got at the bottom of what I'm writing, I've got the brief, and then as I'm doing it, I sort of say, okay, sometimes even cut and paste the sentence that they want, and then I rewrite around it to meet it. So that means I never forget the brief, and I'm always going through it. And one thing we talked about a little bit about when you make mistakes. One of the things I know I make mistakes is when I'm tired. And this time of year, particularly coming up to Christmas, when you've got so many things coming at you. And that's why I never send anything at the end of the day if I can. I usually try and go to bed and reread it in the morning before I send it when I'm fresh. Yeah.
Wow. I did actually do that this morning, Lynn. I finished the story last night at about 6:30 and went, I'll send it off. And I thought, no, it's not due till the end of day tomorrow. today. And so I read it this morning and just went, oh, okay, fix that, fix that, fix that.
It's usually just little things.
Yeah.
They're the things that polish it and make it better.
Yeah, sleeping on it. Oh, look, John, we could talk to you all day, but we've probably talked to you for quite a while. So
Can I just give one more very quick plug?
Please do.
And this is for Rachel's list. And I would suggest this to everybody. And Rachel, I think, had a bit of a flood of tears when I told her I wasn't using this, but the story scheduler from Rachel's list, right?
Pitch tracker?
The pitch tracker. I started using that where I suddenly now have a schedule where the moment I get a commission, I paste it in there. I put in when it's due, how many words it is, what the status is, who it's for. And as I get to work on it, so I've done 2 of the interviews, I update it so that every morning when I open up my computer, I go immediately to that and go, right, what have you got to work on? Okay, so what's due this week? And it's literally there in a schedule. And as I deliver stuff, I just then put it in bold and go, right, well, that's done now. And so like working with that schedule that tracker has completely made me much more effective, to the point that nothing now falls through the crack.
Oh gosh, I'm so pleased. The other thing I love about that tracker is it shows you how many stories you've done, so you can you get that motivation. It gives you a count. Yeah. We'll put that in the show notes, and we'll also put in the show notes about where you can find John, because he's often sharing interesting things. Do we want to talk about the apps and other bits and pieces that you'd be lost without? Because we do ask favorite guests, don't we, about their tools, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. And everyone has different ones. Do you have a list?
Gee, I'm going to sound like a sucker if I say this, but the best tool I have is Rachel's list. And I'm being serious. When I need to think about my processes, and I need to think about, and one other person as well, when I need to think about my processes and am I operating to my best potential, I actually listen to your podcasts and I go through your blog posts and go, this is great. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. And what I love is learning the way other journos are working. Going back to what that editor says, I want everyone, all my freelancers, to work to the standard of all my other freelancers, not the standard I set, but the standard that they have set. And I so often think, am I working to a standard of the industry? So, Rachel, I read pretty much everything on the Rachel's List blog posts and on the Content Bite. And I sometimes listen to them 2 or 3 times. I also check in with the lovely Lindy Alexander and just look to Lindy for inspiration, because I just think I love the way Lindy looks at it from a really, really fresh point of view. And, as we know, Lindy's writing for everybody and doing all kinds of great stuff. So, yeah. I use other people. I use the Rachel's List pitch tracker, and I'm the other thing is, and this is my other trick, is make sure you keep in contact with your editors, so that, as one of them said, you don't just become a name on an email. She said, I have a number of journos that's the only way I respond with them and interact with them, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. She said, however, I have better working relationships, and I tend to lean more towards using the people that I've spoken to occasionally, not every week, not every month, occasionally, or I've interacted a little bit with on LinkedIn, or I see that they've highlighted one of my, a story that I wrote on Instagram and they wrote something nice about it, or I've gone to a networking event, as we thankfully are now able to do, and I've met them, or that they have said, listen, I know you're really busy, but when you've got some time in the next couple of months, can I just pop in and have a very quick coffee with you, just to put a face to the name? And some people go, that's really old fashioned. That form of relationship building is crucial, and I would say essential. As one editor said, I don't want to be best friends with all my freelance journos, but I want to know who they are as a person. And I think that's really important.
It's about the trust again, isn't it?
And that comes back to building relationships and building trust. You don't need to be their best friend. You don't need to be on the phone every week, every month, every second month, but every couple of months, hi, can I just check in with you on that story? Hey, listen, this story is going to be a little bit late. And rather than sending you another email, I just thought I'd say a quick hello.
And that's such a key thing in if you do make a mistake, you've got that kind of relationship base to build on and to go back and
you don't want to have the only time you've ever spoken to an editor to be the time you ring to say there's been a mistake.
I stuffed up.
Yeah,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
One thing I just thought of is that it's not always you that stuffs up, because I've had things when my sources have stuffed up.
Yes.
Or when websites have stuffed up. I had things from a PR and they gave me the wrong photo. I've had a few things like that. So I've always rung, even though it's not technically my fault, I've rung and let them know, because if they find out later that you never told them that, like famously somebody sent me, a picture of Google's Alexa instead of Amazon's Alexa instead of Google's Home. And that's the sort of thing that nobody could see, except that some reader would have noticed that. And it's just the sort of thing that causes a huge issue. But somebody mislabeled an image. And it's just much better to say, I was told this, I put it through in good faith, and this is what's happened. So, because other people stuff up too. That's the thing, isn't it?
I almost had my travel writing career derailed on the first ever travel story I did for one of the Sunday supplements back 12 years ago, when one of my sources, and thank God, he said, listen, I don't have time for an interview, but I will put my quotes on email. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll take that. Thank God he did, because all his quotes included facts and figures, and they were all wrong. And he was the spokesperson for this company, and his facts and figures were completely out. And my editor rang me, and she was literally screaming at me going, you have no idea how much trouble you've caused me, John. This is the first time I've used you, and this is the drama. And I literally, apologized and owned it, etc. And I said, but here's his email. And when she read through it, she went, oh my God, he's the spokesperson for the company. And these facts are completely out. And because I could actually prove, rather than blame, but because I could say, hey, this is what I was working with, she then commissioned me 2 weeks later. And I worked with her for 3 years, and we ended up having a great time. But that almost derailed it. So thank God I had the notes and the backup. So it wasn't just like, oh, I got the figures off a website. It was like, I have the spokesperson from that company, and here are his figures. So,
Amazing. Oh my God, we could talk to you all day and share stories all day, but thank you for sharing your tips with us again. It's been so lovely to have you back on the podcast, and tell us where people can track you down and stalk you on your socials.
Find me at jbmedia.com.au. And yes, to anybody who has a look at it, it does need to be updated. But I'm very busy on LinkedIn, and I'm just John Burfitt at LinkedIn. On Instagram, I'm JB Media Australia, and on Twitter, I'm at John Burfitt. If you ever need to find me, just Google John Burfitt journalist. I'm the only one in the world. So
How lucky.
There are other people with my name, but they're doing different things. So just John Burfitt journalist, and you'll find me.
Oh, fantastic.
Real pleasure.
We'll put those into the show notes. We'll mention some of the other bits and bobs that you mentioned, and we'll also put that link to the bad freelancer stories, which is a good read for anyone who wants to just snort coffee out of their nose and do better themselves.
Yes.
Anyway, but thank you again, John, for coming on again and being our first returning guest.
And I hope I was on my best behavior so I get invited back again.
You were. You never know your luck in the big city. Thanks
you,
for
John.
listening, everyone.
Okay.
And we'll see you all next week. We're going to take a break at some point. I don't know if next week is our last episode.
I think it might be the last one for the year.
Yeah.
So we can have a holiday, Rachel.
Yeah. But we'll be there with jingle bells on next week, and then you can not hear from us for a while.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.